accidentally texted my boss I wanted her. That night, she knocked on my door. It was nearly midnight when Arham finally allowed himself to relax. The city lights filtered faintly through his apartment window, and the quiet hum of traffic below was the only reminder that the world outside was still moving. He had just finished preparing a presentation for work, one that his boss, Miss Sarah Malik, would undoubtedly examine with her usual sharp attention to detail. Thinking about her always made him sit a little straighter, even when she wasn't in the room. She carried authority effortlessly, poised, intelligent, and always composed. His phone buzzed in his hand, pulling him from his thoughts. He had been chatting with a close friend about a complicated crush, or what he had called a harmless admiration. He typed quickly, distracted and exhausted. I swear, sometimes I just want her. He hit send without thinking. A second later, his stomach dropped. The name at the top of the chat wasn't his friend's. It was Ms. Sarah Malik, boss. For a moment, he genuinely couldn't breathe. The message showed delivered. His thumb hovered uselessly over the screen as panic flooded his body. Of all the people in his contact list, it had to be her. The one person he respected professionally more than anyone. The one woman who intimidated him in board meetings with just a single raised eyebrow. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios, termination, humiliation, office gossip. He imagined walking into work and feeling every pair of eyes on him. He typed again, fingers trembling. I'm so sorry, Mom. That message wasn't meant for you. It was a mistake. He erased it, rewrote it, sent it. The silence that followed felt louder than any response could have been. He placed his phone face down on the table, but curiosity and fear forced him to flip it back over every few seconds. No reply, no read receipt, nothing. Sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her expression, calm but piercing, as if she were standing in front of him, demanding an explanation. He tried to convince himself she might ignore it out of professionalism. Maybe she'd pretend she never saw it. Maybe tomorrow she'd call him into her office and end everything with cold efficiency. The next evening, as he sat replaying the disaster in his head, there was a knock at his door. Slow, steady, intentional. His heart slammed against his ribs. No one ever visited him unannounced. He walked to the door, palms slightly damp, and pulled it open. And there she was, not in her sharp office blazer, not behind a polished desk. Just Sarah, composed, confident, and looking directly into his eyes. I think, she said calmly, we need to talk about that message. Aram stepped aside wordlessly, his pulse still racing as Sarah walked into his apartment. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded far louder than it should have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The atmosphere felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter everything. She looked different outside the office. Without the structured blazer and heels, she seemed more human but no less powerful. Her presence still filled the room effortlessly. I truly apologize, Aram began quickly, forcing himself to meet her eyes. That message was never meant for you. It was careless. I understand if you're upset. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She placed her purse on the small table near the dagger and studied him with that same evaluating gaze she used in meetings, calm, analytical, unreadable. Are you afraid I'm here to fire you? She asked evenly. The honesty in the question caught him off guard. He hesitated, then nodded. Yes. A faint breath of amusement escaped her, though her expression remained composed. If I wanted to fire you, Aram, I would have called you into my office. Not come here. That only made his heart beat faster. She took a few slow steps further into the room. Tell me something, she continued. If it was truly just a mistake. Why did you panic so much? His throat tightened. There was no safe answer to that. Because you're my boss, he said carefully. And because I respect you. I would never intentionally cross a professional boundary. She tilted her head slightly. Respect, she repeated, as if testing the word. Yes, he said firmly. You've worked hard to build your position. The last thing I would ever want is to make you uncomfortable or risk your reputation. Something shifted in her eyes. Not anger, not exactly. Something softer. And if I told you, she said quietly, that I didn't feel uncomfortable, The room seemed to shrink. He searched her face for sarcasm, for a trap, but found none. "I don't understand." "I'm not naive," she replied. "I've noticed the way you look at me in meetings, the way you volunteer for my projects, the way you become nervous when I stand too close." Heat rose to his face. There was no point denying it. "I never intended to act on it," he admitted. "It was just admiration." "Admiration can be dangerous," she said softly. Silence stretched between them again, heavier this time. "I came here for clarity," she continued. "If there are feelings involved, on either side, they cannot interfere with work. I will not tolerate favoritism. I will not risk my authority, nor would I ever expect it," he said quickly. Her gaze held his for a long moment. "Good, because if something exists here, it must be handled maturely. No secrets, no power games." His voice dropped slightly. "And if it does exist?" She stepped just a little closer, not touching him, but close enough that he could feel the warmth between them. "Then we proceed carefully." The next morning felt unreal. Urim stood outside the office building for a full minute before walking in, trying to steady his breathing. He had barely slept. Every word from the night before replayed in his mind, her calm voice. The way she said admiration can be dangerous. The almost smile before she left. The office looked the same. The receptionist greeted him the same. His co-workers chatted about deadlines and coffee, like nothing in the universe had shifted. But everything had shifted. When Sarah entered the conference room for the weekly meeting, she was once again every inch the commanding leader. Crisp black suit, hair perfectly styled, expression composed and unreadable. If anyone had seen her at his apartment the night before, they would never believe this was the same woman. She didn't look at him first. She didn't hesitate. She began the meeting with firm confidence, assigning tasks, correcting projections, challenging ideas. When it was Arham's turn to present, she listened with sharp focus, asking precise questions, tougher than usual, professional, unyielding, untouchable. And yet, when he finished and handed her the revised file, their fingers brushed for the briefest second. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't obvious, but it was intentional. A quiet current ran through him, subtle but undeniable. She didn't react outwardly. She simply nodded and moved on. That was the line they had agreed on. After work, he tried to focus on anything else, television, emails, even cleaning his apartment, but his mind kept drifting back to her, to the fact that she had come to his home, to the fact that she hadn't denied there was something there. At exactly 7:12 p.m. his phone buzzed. A message from her. "Dinner, 8 p.m., neutral place. No office discussion." His heart thudded. No emojis, no softness, just clarity. At the restaurant, she arrived 5 minutes late, apologizing briefly. Not like a boss, she seemed lighter, still controlled but warmer. "Do you know how lonely leadership can be?" she asked at one point, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "Everyone sees the authority. Very few see the person." He listened, truly listened. "I can't afford mistakes," she said quietly, "especially emotional ones." Her vulnerability humbled him. "I would never want to complicate your life," he said honestly. "If this threatens your career, I'll step back." She studied him carefully. "And if I don't want you to?" Silence lingered between them, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was deliberate. They discussed boundaries again, transparency, informing HR if things progressed. "You said you wanted me," she reminded him gently. His pulse quickened. "I did." She moved slightly closer, not closing the distance entirely. "Be absolutely sure," she whispered. "Because once we cross that line, we don't get to pretend it was an accident." And for the first time since that text message, he realized this wasn't about a mistake anymore. It was about a choice. A week passed, and nothing about it felt ordinary. At work, Sarah was sharper than ever. If anything, she was more demanding with Arham than with anyone else. She questioned his reports, challenged his timelines, corrected minor details most managers would overlook. To anyone watching, it would seem like she was harder on him, and maybe she was, but he understood why. Professionalism had to be unquestionable, and he admired her even more for it. Outside the office, their conversations were measured but steady. Late-night messages about books, brief phone calls about music, about childhood memories, about the strange weight of expectations. They never flirted openly. They never crossed the boundary they had drawn. But the tension between them no longer felt accidental. It felt intentional. Still, neither of them made the final move. Until the rain came. It was a Thursday night when a storm rolled through the city. Thunder rumbling low and steady. Arham had just finished reviewing documents when there was a knock at his door. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Certain. His heart reacted before his mind did. He walked to the door slowly, almost afraid that his expectations were playing tricks on him again. He opened it. Sarah stood there beneath the dim hallway light, rain clinging to her hair and the shoulders of her coat. She looked composed, but there was something different in her eyes tonight. Not uncertainty. Decision. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said softly. "You're not." Stepping aside. She entered, removing her coat calmly, placing it over the chair like she belonged there. The sound of rain against the windows filled the brief silence between them. "I've been thinking," she began, turning to face him fully. "About us. About the risks." He waited, not trusting himself to speak. "My entire career has been built on control," she continued. "On careful choices. I don't act on impulse." He nodded. His pulse quickened. "I won't hide," she said firmly. "I won't be someone's secret. If we do this, we inform HR. We protect both our positions. We remain professional at work." Every word was steady, thought through. "I don't want an employee," she added, her voice softening slightly. "I want an equal. A partner. Someone who chooses me, not because of my title. Not because of authority, but because they genuinely want me." He stepped closer slowly, giving her space to change her mind. "I meant what I said," he replied quietly. "I want you. Not the boss. Not the title, you." For a brief second, the strong executive mask faded completely. What remained was simply a woman, allowing herself to feel something uncertain. She reached for his hand first. That was her answer. No rush, no reckless passion. Just two adults standing in the quiet glow of a rainy night, choosing something real despite the complications. "That's why I knocked," she whispered. And this time, when the door closed behind her, it wasn't anxiety filling the room. It was certainty.